Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Chaffin Church podcast. If I'm not mistaken, I believe this is episode 6, is it?
I think it is too.
Okay.
Episode 6.
Episode 6. As always, I am joined by my crime-fighting sidekick / co-host, Pastor Martin Holman, also a former professional yodeling instructor. Very interesting fact about Pastor Marty. He can tell you more about that another time. But...
Wait. My son last night told me a yodeling joke. To which I would share with you if I remembered it. But go ahead. Keep going.
Okay. Well, if there's one thing, both in my friendship with Marty and in working with him that he's good for, it is regaling tales of his past, particularly his childhood, which over the last few episodes we have found out is a much more interesting past than mine is. And so, Marty, I wonder if you could start off our episode today by just singing maybe 15 to 20 seconds of just some song from your childhood that will either entertain or shock or appall us.
I once had a dog named Rover, till a Big Mac truck done run him over. Well, I used to call my dog Rover, but now I just call my dog Spot.
Oh man, that is horrible. That is shocking and appalling. All of the things I put at the end of that, you fulfilled all of them. I guess it is entertaining as well now.
I mean, you said a song from my childhood that's about 15 seconds long. I think I hit the criteria.
I was looking for like a very theologically incorrect hymn. That's what I was thinking you were going to do. But you surprised me. Oh. You made us laugh.
Onward, Christian soldiers.
Okay, we've had enough of that. So everyone, welcome to the Chaffin Church podcast today. Feel free to just chide us and make fun of us for the ridiculousness from wherever you're listening to this from. I had the honor of starting us off today. I begged Marty for it. So, and the one thing that I want to ask Marty as we move out of the intro and into the actual content of the podcast is about Marty's extroversion. So you're an extrovert, correct?
I would say yes.
Yes, you would say yes. I think everyone who has ever met you would probably say yes.
That's true.
I would actually say you're probably the most introverted person I've ever met.
Really?
Actually. Yeah.
No, there are definitely... Now, maybe...
No, literally, when people ask me to describe you, I'm like, oh, I'm really good friends with my pastor. And they're like, oh, what's he like? And I'm like, okay, picture Elf, but like a pastor. Like that is literally what I tell them.
I don't know if you have just trashed me.
No.
Do you like the movie Elf?
I love the movie Elf.
Do you like the person who is Elf? Would you?
Yes, although I will admit, maybe, in a little bit smaller doses sometimes, but.
And so this is the issue. So I am not an extrovert, meaning I like to talk more than everyone else. Like there are people who like to talk more than me. However, I do like to hang out more than most people.
Yeah.
And so the small doses thing, I'm super irritated right now because we got to hang out more. You know what I mean?
Well, that actually leads me to my question, which I didn't get to. So the question is, because, I think many of us in this state, and I think the last I heard is that around 4 million people in the state of Massachusetts have received both doses of the vaccine at this point. If you're listening to this after early May of 2021, that number is probably different.
You've been left behind.
Go ahead. Maybe. So basically, my iPad went off. So we know it's about 5 minutes now.
5 minutes.
My iPad went off.
Okay, I'm watching.
Yes. So with people getting their vaccinations, and I think a lot of people are thinking to themselves, I would like to start to socialize again, but how do you even do that? It just feels like there's this minefield, both on our end, right? There's internal stuff. There's for me at least, there's almost like this sense of anxiety. Like it's been so long since I hung out with people. Like, am I just going to be like weird and awkward when I hang out with people, you know? And then I think then there's like the external factors, right? Like how do I figure out, you know, who is comfortable with what, like who's been vaccinated, you know, the you know, and all the mask wearing stuff.
Yeah.
So I figured, you know, I'm an introvert and maybe I'm just not as good at that kind of thing as you are. So I want an extrovert's perspective on like how do we all sort of in a safe way, but also a healthy way, get back out there and do community with each other?
So I am probably the worst person in the world to ask because I'm like, get out, like do it. However.
Oh, so it's not get out of my house, I don't want to hang out with you. It's like, get out there and hang out with people.
Just do it, yeah. However, that being said, I have recently, meaning this weekend, watched as our moderator, Amanda Kane, who we lovingly call Safety Mom.
Do we? Do we, Scott?
Okay, she calls herself that, and I certainly don't disagree.
It is a term of endearment, by the way. We love Amanda Kane.
So
yes,
she, this weekend, or last week, she was vaccinated, and it was pretty interesting. I thought, okay, 2 weeks later and she'll be out and about. And she showed up here. But what happened was something, and the reason was something different. Last week, and I'm not going to go into all the details, but she had a friend who was really going through something that really needed her. The problem, that friend was in the Carolinas. Right? So she ended up flying. Now this is after she was vaccinated.
Okay.
She ended up flying to a place that's far away, the Carolinas. Mm-hmm. And so in the midst of that, like she got thrown in the tank, right? Like,
yeah.
And she had to learn how to swim. And so she did that. She took care of her friend. She spent time with her friend and came back. And so I think that almost opportunity forced her hand to just get out there and realize, okay, I just went to the Carolinas, and then the next Sunday, which was last Sunday, she was here. And it was really cool to see her, and I was kind of shocked. And you know, she's been on during our online service here and has been there almost every week. But then she was here, and then I don't know if I did this on purpose. Sometimes, you know, we already talked about me, but this is just going to reinforce your stereotype of me. I was out with the kids on Sunday afternoon, and I text Dave and Amanda. I was like, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? They're like, we're just hanging out. I'm like, oh, I'm going to stop by. They have an outdoor setup, right? So I know I'm not going to go in their house with 5 kids and wreak germ havoc. And so we went there. They brought out a grill, like they have a grill. They have a great outdoor setup. And we just hung out and had a cookout, right? And so she was thrown like one weekend, and really over the course of the week. And so having gone through that or seen her do that, because I can't understand personally that anxiety. I'm just literally for a year I've been out and about on my own. Like I'm not trying to get in people's grill, right? I'm not going over to people's homes or making house visits or anything like that. So one of the things I saw there was she went after the need. There was a need, and she took care of the need, so that forced her to step out of her house and really step out in a huge way, right? And so it wasn't selfish based. So there are plenty of serving opportunities. Whether it is the Food and Code Drive, whether it's going down into Worcester and find, a nonprofit organization, like what is a need? To me, that could be an awesome opportunity. In fact, that really is what spurred me on to move outside of my comfort zone back, 9 months ago or more. Is Darlene Layton, who runs the kitchen at the Friendly House in Worcester, needed help, and that was as far back as a little after March.
So let me see if I can encapsulate sort of what you're saying. So you're saying like find something that motivates you above and beyond whatever's holding you back from feeling uncomfortable, whether that's anxiety or maybe it's just pure laziness. Hey, I haven't hung out with people. Netflix is more appealing. Find something that's more compelling than that just wins in your mind and roll with it.
That wins in your mind.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't easy. I mean, just from my own experience, to get in a van at Friendly House and go to parks in Worcester when the news is telling me anything I touch is going to make me sick and perhaps die, right? Like that, and nobody knows at that point. Right. And I remember Ray Rogers and I, and of course Ray attends Chaffin, Ray Rogers and I driving around in the van, and I had a big tank of sanitizer ready to go every time I got in, every time I got out. And I was probably pretty healthy. I probably should have maintained that habit. But I do think that is a really awesome way. Like, what is something you could do to serve the community, serve in a way that maybe being at home right now, we've been at home for a long time.
So even if one of your friends is not in need, just pretend that they are and be like, I'm coming over. You sound awful, like clearly something has happened and I need to come over and we need to hang out in your hot tub, like something like that. You need to just make it up. Yeah. So, thank you for that.
I think that's super important.
That is something that I needed to hear. So cool. Thank you.
There are some other things like going, you need to connect with other people, right?
Right.
You got to connect with other people. Even if you're an introvert, connecting with other people is important. And so just stepping out of that comfort zone, maybe not as much as I do, but it does help you spiritually, emotionally, to connect with people who are healthy for you, I think.
Do you like to smile? I like to smile.
I like to sing. Singing is my favorite. Congratulations, right. World's best cup of coffee.
Okay, we can go really far down this rabbit hole if we're not careful.
It's true.
So do you want to take us into our next item?
Yeah. I think I'm pretty excited about this. We have a friend.
We have many friends.
But
this one is very special.
This one is very special. She is visiting all the way from Virginia. Now, her story starts in Massachusetts, which is why we have invited her here. Her name, my friends, is Linda Markarian. Linda, can you join us, please? Yes, come on. Woo. What's up? You ready to do this?
Oh, that's a throwback.
Sing.
Okay, if you guys don't remember, that was something that we had put together early on in the pandemic. Marty just drove around and got these just short little clips of people just doing ridiculous dances on their front porches or their front lawns. And we put together a video. It's Sing Wherever I Go by...
We the Kingdom.
We the Kingdom, right. We the Kingdom. And it was a good video. So,
speaking of which, Ryan, I have to apologize to you.
For?
Last year, you sent me a list of songs.
Yes.
And I loved We the Kingdom at the time. And I hadn't heard all their songs. I'd heard that song and a few others. And one of those songs was Child of Love. And I specifically remember thinking to myself, this song is kind of irritating. I'm not sure why he sent it to me. Like, I understand it's We the Kingdom, but probably not going to like this song. I don't like this song. And I have heard it in recent days on K-Love,
Oh, no.
Caleb.
What kind of apology is this? You bring up Caleb. Oh, man. You ruined it.
And I would like to say I'm sorry, Ryan, because the song is amazing. And in the future, I probably will listen more to your song suggestions.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, no, that's good. And Caleb apparently was listening to me as well, which has not happened in the past, but apparently has now. But Linda brought us back there. She brought us back to that little video, it was pretty fun. I don't know. Did you enjoy that little video? Was that
I
why
did, and I was actually envious because I was sitting out on my balcony in Lynchburg by myself in the middle of the pandemic, and I was happy to see everybody, but I wish that I could have waved to everybody.
Aww.
So
Lynchburg, Virginia. All right.
So Linda, our story starts, our story that we know. You walked in to a movie theater church that Ryan was leading worship, and you decided to come back the next week, which is totally crazy. Just kidding. That was and you started attending that church, which I was the pastor of. Mm-hmm. So real quick question, because the focal point of our conversation is going to revolve around finding a church, which can be important because I think a lot of people are moving, a lot of people are changing churches, a lot of people are thinking about church, thinking about leaving church altogether. So there's a lot of transition in regards to churches. And so you know a little bit about this because you've had some transition yourself in the last 5 years.
Yep.
And so you walked into our church, which was is a church called Fellowship Church. What was your thought? What were you coming from?
Well, I had actually left my church, so I was raised in another church, and I hadn't done anything else but that. And I was struggling with it, and I'd go and I'd say I can't go again, and then I'd go and I'd say I can't go again. I came to peace with that, but when I came to peace with it, I knew I needed to go someplace else.
Okay.
So someone had told me about Fellowship, and I just never got there. And so one day Sunday morning, I looked at my husband and I said, I'm going. And he said, okay. And I said, it's in a cinema. So if I'm not back by 11, it's a cult because.
Oh, so you went by yourself?
Yeah.
Oh, that's like very brave.
So,
yeah.
Well, he laughed, and because I was used to going to this big, huge church, and so I mean, going to church in a theater was whatever. So I walked in, and from the moment I showed up and somebody greeted me, I thought this is pretty cool. And of course, then I saw Angela, big smile.
Angela Rogers.
Angela Rogers.
We talked to last week on the podcast.
Yeah, okay. So then I went in, and I don't know, I just had this wave of come over me. And I also met Corrine Menino, is that how you say her last name? And so I just went, and I really liked it. And I went back, and then the second week, Don Van Riper asked me about a small group, and I was like, yeah. So I went to that, like 2 weeks being into the church, and then I kind of just, of course, I got, I'll call it roped in by Angela Rogers to help, and like the third week or fourth week, I think I was helping to set up.
You were setting up there at the church.
And was that was a welcome addition to your life, setting things up at that point? Was that good?
Except for going up and down the stairs, it was awesome.
Yes.
But yeah, and I never really realized what was happening. But when I started to look for a church after we moved, I realized that it was the community that I hadn't had in decades.
Wow.
So.
In decades.
Yeah, because the other church I went to, I don't think community was it's not the kind of community that I have now. So that's why I say community, and community is important, and I never really realized how important it was until I moved to Virginia. I thought I did, but then when we moved to Virginia and I was there alone, and it was during the pandemic, and I was going to church on my balcony, and I was going to here.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's...
So, are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I was listening to you, and for people that know me, they would laugh if they heard me say, I think I'm an introvert, but I'm both.
You're both. Okay.
I think, yeah.
Because I think that's part of the discussion is a lot of times I think I've heard that churches revolve around extroverts, their community. And, I understand that there's introverts and extroverts. And so trying to think around that when you're talking about searching for a church, it's good probably that you're both, right? And so you moved for a job.
Correct.
To Ohio.
Yes. A very different area than what I was used to here.
A very different area. Okay, in Cincinnati, right?
Yeah, right outside of Cincinnati, yep.
What was different?
I think it was more conservative than what I was used to up here in
Politically, theologically?
life. It was just
life in
it was
general.
just more conservative. And like I actually took pictures of some billboards and sent them home to my daughter because I didn't really believe that billboards like that existed, And so and it was hard to I didn't know how to find a church because I found fellowship, but people had told me about it. So then I asked you, I remember saying to you, like, do you know where I should go to church? And you and someone else had suggested that I go to a church, and I went, and it was I went in the first time and I loved it, and I sat there, and then I went back the second time, and I didn't feel the way I felt when I walked into fellowship, and maybe I shouldn't compare them, but that was my only frame of reference. So I called you and said, help me find another one, and you told me, and I walked into that church, and that was it. I was there. In fact, the woman that I sat next to, she came down and got me, brought me up into the front row, and her and I text every Sunday.
Even today?
Yep. Lynn and Johnny.
Lynn and Johnny.
Yep.
Wow, great job, Lynn and Johnny.
So,
Ryan, I think you could probably have some insight here. Like when somebody walks in to a church, right? And like, what do you mean by feeling? Like, do you ever get like when you were at your churches in Washington, Chicago, and other places, did you get like, is that like the feeling thing? That was an interesting, I don't know.
I remember
statement.
telling Corrine I felt like I was home.
The second time?
No, when I went to fellowship.
As fellowship?
Yep.
Okay.
And that's what I mean, like I was comparing how I felt when I walked into fellowship to the first church I went to in Ohio. And I only gave it 2 chances, but it just didn't connect. But the first time I walked into Landmark in Cincinnati, I just knew, like.
You felt like you were home again?
Yeah, it was just the place I wanted to be.
That's interesting.
So.
I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's my ears sort of perked up when you were talking about like sort of like, I don't know, is this a comparison trap kind of thing, right? Because Marty and I do this from time to time. We'll just be having some random conversation, and we'll be like, hey, like, do you remember how you felt when we were at fellowship and this happened, right?
Yes.
And it's not because we want to like, oh, let's redo the fellowship days specifically, but it was just like that church had its own like unique feeling, and sometimes you miss some of those things, But yeah, I get what you mean. Every church you go to, there's a feel. There are things to appreciate about almost every church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes people ask me, they're like, "Oh, you work for a church denomination? Like, what do you think about this culture out there of people church hopping? People don't like stick with their churches anymore. Isn't it horrible?" And I'm like, actually, no, it's an incredible luxury that we are able to pick churches that are life-giving to us. And we don't have to feel shame about leaving a community that is not the right fit, for us. When we worship there, their expression of faith may not sort of jive with who we are as a person. And that's okay, And the fact that we can hop in a car and drive for 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes or 1 more minute or whatever it is, right? And just be in a totally different environment with a different pastor and a different worship team. This is an incredible privilege that we have, Can it be abused? Of course it can. But, You know, like so I hear some, like Linda's story, like I love that you, so it didn't, the new church in Virginia didn't feel like fellowship, right? And initially that must have
This
been.
is Ohio.
This is
Sorry,
Ohio,
I'm sorry, I'm getting the parts of the story wrong. So you went to the church in Ohio. Initially, you're sort of like disappointed, maybe like, hey, this doesn't feel like fellowship, doesn't feel, I don't get the warm and fuzzies or whatever that I did at fellowship. But from what you're saying, I think you came to appreciate it, right?
Right.
Like for its own strengths and what
Yeah.
that church brought to the table, right?
And I knew I'd found it because my husband came. So my husband would be in and out of fellowship. And I mean, everybody knew him. And then I said to him one Sunday, do you want come to church with me? And he's like, okay. And he went back and forth like he did at fellowship. And I'm like, that's when I knew.
Because he went and liked it enough to come
Yeah,
back.
and he would come, and some weeks he came and some weeks he didn't, but I knew that I'd found the right place.
I mean, I just love the idea that the feeling. What is it people say that people make their decision up about a church within the first half hour or something, that they go to a church? And so what makes that especially hard is if you go in and find a church that's kind of good, right? Like your first scenario was like, you kind of liked it, but it wasn't home.
Correct.
Which is super interesting because it kind of puts a mystical spin on the church family, like that it's not just whether or not the pastor's hair is parted just right, or is wearing preachers with sneakers, $750 Nike shoes, or the greeters are just doing the right thing.
I once heard that you could tell everything you needed to know about a church by the type of pants that the pastor was wearing. So like the degree to which their jeans were skinny or baggy, or like you could tell or were they Dockers? Like what, is this a very straight-laced church, right? You could
Or
tell
the
everything
robe.
you needed to know. Yes, exactly.
My pastor in Ohio wore jeans and cowboy boots.
Well, that's a whole other thing. Yeah, there you go.
Yes, he did.
And he danced.
And he danced. And I have a picture of him. It's my uncle. I have a picture of him next to Robert Plant.
Of Led Zeppelin.
Right. Not the actual Robert Plant. It's a picture and then a picture of him, and I put them together, and it looks exactly alike. And so there's a lot of similarities there.
That's funny.
So, okay, you found this church in Ohio. You're super excited. And then what happens?
It just didn't work out at my job.
It didn't work out at your job.
Yep.
So Ohio, the Buckeye State, you bid adieu.
Yes.
And you moved a very short time. I mean, how long were you at your job?
It was
1 year.
just a year, yep.
And then you moved to Virginia, Lynchburg, Virginia, home of Jerry Falwell.
Which I had no idea where I was going.
You had no idea.
Nope. So
Okay. And so you got there, you moved across about, what is that?
3 states. Well, West Virginia, Ohio.
About 10 hours, 9 hours from,
Yeah, about 9
from
hours.
Cincinnati. And so there you were, in a new place, the same situation.
All over again.
And it's a pandemic now.
Yep. And I'm by myself.
And
Because
you're,
my husband was back in Ohio selling the house.
oh, okay. So what happened? Like, how did you move into the stage of finding a church there?
So in the beginning, when I was there, like at the height of it, I just watched online. And I watched your church, and I watched my Cincinnati church because it was the most comfortable, and it, I was by myself on my balcony, so I'm like, I'm just gonna do what feels good. And then we bought our.
I won't tell Matt
Okay.
that you told me I'm better than him.
Well, it was different music at the first service in Cincinnati. I have to admit, I went to the older service. It was more hymn. The hymns were more what I'd grown up with,
Okay.
mixed in with some country. And then the second service there was more contemporary.
Okay.
So, so I did that for a while, and then when we bought our house in September, I was actually talking to the people that did our foundation work, and we were new, and I told the gentleman I was looking for a church, and he said, you are to come to my church. And so I said, huh. So he told me the name of it, and I went that Sunday, and I liked it. I mean, I walked in, and again, it's in the pandemic, and people greeted you, 6 feet away. I sat by myself. No one came up to me, and that was kind of, again, my comparison, but nobody was,
Yeah, how do you compare anything during the pandemic?
Yeah, you
It's
can't
hard.
really.
Yeah.
But I really liked it, and I went back a few times, and actually these 4 people behind me that sat there every week, one of them came up and said, they introduced themselves, and I asked them about small groups, and they were still meeting, so I went to the small group the next week.
Okay.
So, and it was good. It wasn't the right small group for me. I went a few times, but when I started, they said, look, there's a lot of small groups, and if you find out this isn't the one, we have, a lot more. And so I switched groups.
And how is your new group?
It's good. I just think I relate more. It was a bunch of really young people that had all gone to Liberty together.
The first one or the second one?
The first one.
The first
so
one,
they kind
okay.
of had their own little internal jokes. They weren't trying to be rude, but it just kind of happened.
Yeah.
And so the second one is more, I'll say it's more family oriented. People come there like, big world problems with their kids and stuff, which is what I'm more used to. And I did go to another church just to seek one out, and I went into that one, and that one was just not for me.
Okay, so let me ask you a question, and I wasn't planning on asking this question, but do you feel like you're home, like at the church, your church home now? Because I'm listening to your voice.
No, I don't.
Okay.
But I'm leaving it open because it's really hard to establish community when we're living like we are.
Right.
And so I'm just leaving it open, and we'll see, what happens.
Yeah.
So, and I always ask people where they go to church, which is just so, if, back up 10 years ago, and that was just, not something that I talked about.
Okay.
But.
Wow. Any further questions, Sir Ryan?
Well, I want to ask, just kind of with the theme of your story being what it is, and you haven't reached the sort of, you never really reached the resolution on this, but even a short-term resolution, you're still sort of out there, right?
Yeah.
But if you could give advice to people, like Marty mentioned at the beginning of this, just people who are just making church-related transitions right now, like what would be 1 or 2 pieces of advice that you would give them?
One of them would be, I'd say go, because I did a lot of the online stuff. And the church was shut down and everything was online. But the moment that they started to open up, I went back, because I don't think you can get a feeling of community by doing it online, And the other thing is, think about what it is that you're really looking for. Like, what is it? What kind of connection are you trying to get? And so for me, it's funny, but I realized it was community only in Virginia, because I'm sitting on my balcony and I'm seeing all these people that I not only went to church with, but became my friends back here in Holden. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? When I went to fellowship, my life kind of shifted, and all these people became friendly. I became friendly with them. Mm-hmm. So, and that's kind of what I'm looking for in Virginia.
Okay. Awesome.
So,
well, thank you.
You're
and
welcome.
I hope that you've helped people out there in Holden and beyond. Really, this is a time where a lot of decisions. A lot of people are leaving their churches to go to another church, to not go to church at all. And so it's important for the church in general to think through this. And it's important to, if somebody's moving, I have 3 friends right now this week who are moving.
Really?
From California, 2 of them, and then one of them from a different area of the country. So lots of moving going on, lots of happening. Finding a church family can be difficult.
I can say I even had a 2-cupper Sunday one day where I watched one church and then I watched you guys. So I went to church twice in one day. So
Simmer down there, Linda.
I know.
All right. Hey, we're going to go to How Do I, our segment, which is akin to the message here on on our podcast. And how do I live out my faith? Which is a very generic term, but I remember when I first saw Iron Man. You remember that?
Which one?
The first Iron Man.
The 2008.
2008 with Robert Downey Jr. And he was the first kind of Marvel character of the movie. It was like amazing, and he was so cool, and it was awesome. And then along the way, as we moved on to other Marvel movies, we were introduced to other characters. And some of those characters even met, even if it was at the beginning or the very end, the end credits. And then we saw Avengers. I mean, when I saw Avengers for the first time, Linda, maybe that did nothing for you.
I haven't seen either of those movies, so I just enjoy listening to it.
We're going to
man.
stop right now and pray. That's awesome. Okay, well, it was awesome.
It sounds it. I look at your face.
Oh, man.
It actually is. I tend to judge movies harshly, and I just have to say that almost every one of those Marvel Universe movies that, like Marty mentioned, started with Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. in 2008. That generation that started at that point. I think when they were bought by Disney was around that time.
Right.
No.
I try to make fun of them, but I can't. They're so good.
Disney Plus, go for it.
Okay.
Unless you're boycotting it. So last week we talked about love, and specifically sacrificial, radical, self-giving love. And that is the best way. That is what we're really called to do as Christians on this earth, to be the light, and that light is love, is sacrificial, radical, self-giving love. So today, love is going to meet a friend. Another superhero. Love is the Iron Man in my analogy, guys. Okay? And it's going to be like Iron Man 2, where he meets another connecting character. So one of the hard things sometimes about living the Christian life is living it out practically, but not making it self-help, right? So we can easily self-help the Bible and make it all about us and make it all about me and all that. And yet when we live it out practically, it can seem bare, like there's nothing going on. Like, am I just supposed to be nice? Is that who I am as a Christian? I'm just supposed to be nice? Anybody can be nice. So John, who also is super nice, the evangelist, in 1 John chapter 5, he says this: everyone who believes that Jesus is the Christ has become a child of God. And everyone who loves the Father loves his children too. We know we love God's children if we love God and obey his commandments. Loving God means keeping his commandments, and his commandments are not burdensome. Love that. For every child of God defeats this evil world, and we achieve this victory through our faith. And who can win this battle against the world? Only those who believe that Jesus is the Son of God. So I want to share 3 statements that I think will help us to live, that Christians can take on, that will help us to live out our faith. Okay? Here's the first one. I am a child of God, therefore I love. Okay? God is love. I'm born of God. I am a child of God. I am a believer of God in his Son, Jesus Christ, right? And so going back to the superhero model, Iron Man can shoot things. Right? Right. Mm-hmm. Out of his eyes or his wrists or whatever. Now, think of love as active. Like my good friend Toby Mack said years ago, around January 10th, 1993, love is a verb. Boom! Love is a verb. Down with the DC talk. Okay, right. Love is a verb.
You should have sung that one at the beginning.
I should have. I totally should have.
I'm still crying inside about that
You
poor
can take
dog.
us out with that if you want.
So the question is, that I'm going to ask you guys, is there a difference between being an active Christian and a passive one. Not an active churchgoer, but an active child of God. Like, what does that look like? And should we be active in terms of our love, in terms of our radical, self-giving love?
Yeah.
I'm preaching and you're convicted. Just say it right now, guys. No?
I mean, I think there are times where that activity is going to be greater and lesser. I mean, of course. But yeah, I mean, of course, we should be seeking out opportunities to be active in our faith in that way, to be loving people, and yeah, definitely.
I think people talk about the South, and it's there's a church on every corner, and that kind of thing. And me coming to my faith so late, that I think that God sent us to Ohio to get to Virginia, and I talk more openly about it now than I ever do.
Is that because you're in Virginia and it's down south?
I think that I think I've learned more, but I also think that I'm not, I just don't care. Like, I'm going to share it, and if people if they want to hear it, they can. If they're not, they don't want to hear it, it's okay.
Okay.
I mean, but it's even in the workplace, which is so foreign from what I was used to up here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess I'm a little bit more courageous because there still are, people that don't believe, but
Yeah.
I'm willing to kind of put myself out there in Virginia.
Interesting.
So,
Well, and I think here there are ways that, I don't think you have to vocalize everything. You can just you can love actively every way we can, and our natural self leads me, I'll just use myself as an example, leads me to laziness a lot of the time. And so we have to be inspired to love. Why? Because God is love. And if I am born of God, then I am born of love. I am a child of love. Going back to that song. So I know it won't always be like this, but right now, my kids are like, this is kind of their attitude, I'm a Holman. Right? I love my mom and my dad. I get more kisses right now than I ever have in my whole life. It's so amazing. My 4 kids are all over me. I am a child of the Holmans, they might say. And that's kind of the mindset we should have. I am a child of God, therefore I love. And I was thinking about this in social media, and I'm going to get past this real quick, but how many times I'm cynical on social media, right? And I kind of get through. So I was literally watching a social media fight yesterday. And I said something, and it wasn't cynical or mean, but it definitely sided on one of the sides. And I had to do a follow-up where I basically just told everybody I loved them. because I was really convicted about like this. I am a child of God, therefore I'm a child of love. Secondly, the second statement we can say to live out our faith is this. When I love God, and this is what he says here, when I love God, I obey him. It's hard for us to consider tying love to obedience because we think about parents and we think about bosses and we think about other people, right? And maybe we're even parents and we're like certainly not perfect, but we're deaf, not God. If you're God, you can tie love to obedience because he's perfect. Think about the commands that Jesus gives. Here's just a small portion. Love your enemies, right? I mean, sometimes you hear preaching, but typically even Christians don't do that very well. Trust me, Jesus said. Abide in me. Rejoice when people are persecuting you. Let your light shine before men. Be reconciled, meaning to other people who you have friction with. Keep your word. Don't lust. Go the second mile when somebody is hurting. Lay up for yourself treasures in heaven. So these commandments are commandments for all the time that we're called to obey. And I'm just going to take a step here. I don't think we're called to obey everything that Paul says. Okay? Mm-hmm. I'm not saying rebel against the Bible or anything. I think we're called to obey the commandments of Christ, right? And, for instance, there are plenty of commandments in the Old Testament that we no longer follow, even in regular church life in America, right? But the commandments of Jesus, if you look through them, and I've gone through the whole list, they're kind of just like, that's really hard and it's really convicting, and most of the time I don't want to do that, but it's something I know I should do. When I love God, I obey him, and that's going to help. And here's the third thing, because I know I need to move forward. I actually have some other stuff there. The third thing is this. My faith destroys the world's systems. It doesn't build them up. Now let me look. For every child of God, this is the phrase, defeats this evil world, John says. And we achieve this victory through our faith. So we're constantly trying to build up systems for more efficiency in the body of Christ. And honestly, I think that's baloney. Okay? It wouldn't be baloney if following Jesus was about information. In other words, here's what I mean by that. Early Christians didn't need systems to love people. You don't need systems to love. Systems are actually antithetical at times to love. I don't think systems are sinful. But faith actually tears down systems because it allows you to press through, because you know that by faith you love God, and there is a God who wants you to love no matter what, who wants you to press through that system and love that person. Because Christianity is not a set of beliefs, but a supernatural, radical, self-giving love initiated by the same God who created the world and who the world decided in general to buck against in lieu of trying to play God. So love builds up, but faith breaks down, according to John here. And so you're like, that's impossible. No way. No way. I have the faith that we can love. I have the faith that we can move forward as the church, even past this pandemic, and get away from faith as politics and move towards love. So, just to be honest, this message a lot of times is way different on Sunday. But a lot of times the things that you say helps me for that message preparation.
Are you pointing specifically to me? Because you know.
Yeah, a lot of times.
Oh, I didn't think it was me.
I mean, this is her first time.
Linda was sort of in,
yeah,
in
no,
the
it's not
range of
me.
your hand motion there. So yeah.
All right. Hey, Chaffin good news time. So here it is. This is the segment where we pass off good news to you. Last weekend, right here, we had our monthly food and coat drive, and 45 coats and 250 pounds of food were donated.
Wow.
And that makes, I'm not sure how many coats, but it makes about 2,300 pounds of food so far for this year that we as a church have given to the Wachusett Food Pantry. Also, Alexis and Osiris Vallejos. They opened up their new coffee shop called Bria Coffee right here at 697 Main Street in Holden.
Where is 697 Main Street?
So it's right across from Mexicali Grill.
Oh, yes. Where there was that computer shop used to be there. I don't know if they still are. It's not building.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, there's also, I found out today after I wrote this, there's also a new business in there that I went to. I don't know if it's a business. It's like an Herbalife Shake Shack, one of those shake places. It's called Elevate Nutrition. It tasted too good to be nutritious. I'm just going to be honest. It probably isn't. So that's that. Birthdays. Sarah Joanna on Facebook. I can't remember. Sarah's birthday.
Is it Hennessy?
Hennessy.
Yes.
Thank you. Sarah Hennessy. Wyatt Dancy. Wyatt Dancy turned 16. I mean, if you can believe that, like,
Wow.
that's crazy. We're getting old. Anybody else? You guys know anybody else who has a birthday?
Me?
I think you missed someone.
It's your when's your birthday?
May 29th.
May 29th. So that's why I wouldn't have said it or found it on Facebook.
Oh.
Because I do it every week.
Okay.
But you're not going to be here on May 29th. So
Correct.
happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy 45th birthday. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you.
And
Big celebration in Virginia if anybody wants to come down.
big celebration.
Very nice.
Cool. This week is Teacher Appreciation Week. I don't know if you knew that. Who is your favorite teachers?
I had a bunch of teachers that I really liked, but there was this one teacher. She was a graphic arts teacher at Wachusett. Her name is Mrs. Ranson. I don't know if she'll ever watch this, but she was not well liked by much of the student populace at Wachusett, but I really liked her. Like she really took the time to help me grow my digital chops. And so
Is she still a teacher?
I don't actually know. But she was pretty great.
Okay.
I would say Miss Shea. She was my third grade teacher. I had two of them, but I had gone through a pretty traumatic event in my life, and I'll never forget. She pulled me aside at recess and shared her yodel with me and asked me.
Are you for real?
Yes,
She shared her what?
yodel.
That's fantastic.
That is the third yodel reference of this episode. I swear to you, this was not planned.
I just
Each of
realized
us-
that definitely was not
Each of us
intentional.
brought a yodel reference to this episode.
I find that happens often though. Like when we bring on guests, like the passage of scripture, it connects sometimes, or stuff on Chaffin Good News. I don't know. The world is interesting that way.
Wow. I wish I could say that was scripted, but it wasn't.
No.
It's almost like there's some sort of spiritual reality, you know?
Around yodel.
Oh, yeah.
There's something going on here, you know?
Oh man. And then it's Mother's Day. It's Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to everyone. Obviously, this podcast lives beyond this particular day. However, we want to make sure to celebrate mothers. You're a mother, Linda.
I am.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
You're an awesome mom, and yeah. What's it like? What's the best thing about being a mom?
It never goes away. I'm always a mom.
That's deep. Okay. All right. So thank you, moms. You're awesome and just incredible. That's it. So we're done. So if you get a chance, if you could subscribe to our podcast. It's called the Chaffin Church Podcast. And we're primarily focusing on topics that interest both the faith community and the central Massachusetts area, like Holden Road Race and finding churches is kind of, but you're from this area, so.
Yes.
And so then Chaffin. That's it. So please do that. You can rate and review. That gets the word out. Apparently it gets the word out. I'm not sure.
And where can they do that? So YouTube,
iTunes, like Apple Podcasts,
Yep.
Google Podcasts, Spotify, and a few others, Anchor.fm. And so please check that out. You can also go to chaffin.church and see any of our podcasts there. Also, if you liked this so much that you'd love to donate to us, here at Chaffin Church, feel free to do so at chaffin.church/giving, or you can text any amount to 84321 or send your check to 155 Shrewsbury Street in Holden 01520, because that is where we are based out of. Linda, thanks so much for being here. Your
Thank you
story
for
is
having me.
really interesting. I look forward to the time when you move from Lynchburg to Sterling, Massachusetts to complete the circle of life.
Okay. But if I don't, come on down to Lynchburg.
It's warm. Is it warmer there?
Oh, yeah, our tulips and daffodils have gone by.
Okay.
Wow.
And Ryan, you will be happy to know that this podcast is 4 minutes shorter.
4 minutes shorter. Very good job, Marty.
Nice job.
That is about the time. Okay. Hey, have a great day from Sir Ryan Thompson. Any parting words?
I got nothing, people. I got nothing.
All right. So the last thing I'm going to say is this. That's your Chaffin good news. Now go and give some out.